Story number 1. The noises in the basement. I still wake up in the dead of night. The memory of that fateful winter evening in my old Wisconsin farmhouse etched into my mind like the frost that once clung stubbornly to the window panes. My name is Linda Harris, and the events that unfolded in the quiet solitude of my rural home have left an indelible mark on my soul. A constant reminder of the thin veil between safety and the unknown. Living alone in the countryside had always been my sanctuary. The endless stretches of snow-covered fields, the towering pines standing sentinel against the biting cold, and the peaceful silence that enveloped my home provided a sense of calm that city life could never offer. My farmhouse, inherited from my grandparents, was a relic of simpler times. Its wooden beams and sturdy stone foundation standing strong against the harsh winters that swept through Wisconsin year after year. It was the first week of December, the air crisp with the promise of the approaching holidays. The days were short, and the nights stretched on endlessly, each one colder and darker than the last. I had settled into a comfortable routine, spending my evenings by the fireplace, sipping hot tea, and reading books that transported me to worlds far removed from the isolation of my home. But on the night of December 14th, everything changed. The snow was falling thick and relentless, each flake settling softly on the ground and adding to the already deep drifts that surrounded my farmhouse. I had just finished preparing dinner, the aroma of roasted vegetables and hearty stew filling the house with warmth. As I washed the last of the dishes, a strange sense of unease settled over me, a feeling that something was not quite right. I tried to shake it off, attributing it to the stress of the upcoming holidays and the isolation of living alone. With a sigh, I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, the wood groaning under my weight. As I slipped beneath the covers, the warmth of the blanket enveloped me, and I felt the familiar comfort of falling asleep. Around midnight, my peace was shattered by the sound of creaking footsteps coming from the basement. First, I thought it was just the house settling, the pipes groaning under the weight of the snow. But the sound was too deliberate, too rhythmic to be anything but someone or something moving down there. My heart pounded in my chest as I lay still, straining to listen. The footsteps stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that pressed in on me from all sides. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, but the unease deepened, settling like a stone in my stomach. Summoning every ounce of courage, I decided to investigate, grabbing a flashlight from the kitchen drawer. I descended the stairs to the basement, each step echoing ominously in the stillness. The basement was dimly lit, the faint glow of the light bulb casting long shadows on the concrete walls. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and old wood, a testament to years of neglect. I reached the bottom of the stairs, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The basement was empty, no signs of anyone else being there. The only noise was the soft drip of water from a leaky pipe and the distant howl of the wind outside. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding, relief washing over me. But just as I was about to turn back, a chilling gust of wind swept through the basement, extinguishing my flashlight and plunging me into darkness. Panic surged through me as I fumbled to relight it, my hands trembling uncontrollably. When the light flickered back to life, I saw nothing out of the ordinary, no intruder, no sign of disturbance. Shaking off the fear, I decided to call it a night. I ascended the stairs, trying to calm my racing heart. But as I reached the top, something caught my eye. Standing at the end of the hallway was a shadowy figure, its outline barely visible in the dim light. My breath caught in my throat as I stared, unable to tear my gaze away. The figure was tall, draped in a flowing white gown that seemed to shimmer in the faint light. Its face was obscured by darkness, but its presence was unmistakably sorrowful. I froze, fear and confusion battling within me as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice barely more than a whisper. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it began to move slowly towards me, each step deliberate and haunting. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my legs felt like lead, refusing to move. As the figure drew closer, I could feel a chill emanating from its presence, the air around me growing colder with each passing second. Suddenly, the figure vanished, the hallway returning to its oppressive silence. I stood there, breathless and trembling, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Gathering every ounce of courage, I approached the window, hoping to find an explanation, but the view outside was as bleak as ever, no one in sight, just the endless expanse of snow-covered fields. As I turned back to the living room, my gaze met the window opposite mine. There, etched into the glass, was a faint, ghostly imprint, a silhouette of a woman standing just beyond the glass, her eyes hollow and filled with an unspoken sorrow. I recoiled, the image seared into my mind, a haunting reminder that something supernatural was at play in my otherwise ordinary home. The rest of the night was a blur of fear and restless sleep. The image of the woman in the window haunting my dreams and keeping me awake long after the first light of dawn had broken through the icy panes. I tried to rationalize the experience, telling myself it was a trick of the light or my imagination fueled by loneliness and stress. But deep down, I knew it was something far more sinister. The next morning, I found my home in disarray. All the windows and doors were wide open, despite my being certain that I had locked them before going to bed. The snow had blown through with such ferocity that it left no trace of my attempts to secure the house. My heart sank as I realized that someone, or something, had been inside, but there was no sign of forced entry or any evidence of an intruder. I called the local police, reporting the strange occurrences and the unsettling presence I had felt the night before. The officers arrived promptly, their presence offering a small measure of comfort in the wake of my terror. They conducted a thorough search of the house, but found nothing, no signs of an intruder, no evidence of a break-in, just the lingering chill and the open windows. Sometimes, old houses like yours can have drafts and structural issues that make doors and windows appear open. One of the officers explained, trying to reassure me, but we'll keep an eye on the area in case anything else happens. Relieved yet still deeply unsettled, I thanked them and closed the door, locking it securely behind me, but the feeling of being watched persisted, an invisible presence lingering in the corners of my home and in the shadows that danced just out of sight. Over the following weeks, the strange occurrences continued. Late-night noises echoed through the house, whispers that seemed to come from nowhere, footsteps that vanished as quickly as they appeared, and fleeting glimpses of the woman in white at the windows. Each incident chipped away at my sense of security, replacing it with a growing dread that something malevolent was intent on driving me away from my sanctuary. Desperate for answers, I delved into the history of my farmhouse, uncovering stories of previous inhabitants who had experienced similar hauntings. One tale stood out, a woman named Eleanor Whitaker, who had lived in the house over a century ago. Eleanor was known for her kindness and her love of winter, but her life had been tragically cut short in a snowstorm that had ravaged the area. Locals believed that her spirit was bound to the house, unable to move on from the love and loss that had defined her existence. Determined to free myself from the haunting, I decided to reach out to a local medium, hoping to communicate with Eleanor and understand her lingering presence. The medium, an elderly woman named Agnes, agreed to visit and conduct a séance in my home. On the night of the séance, the house was silent, the snow continuing to fall outside in a relentless dance. Agnes arrived with her tools, a collection of crystals, candles, and ancient books filled with symbols and incantations. She set up a circle of candles in the living room, their flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. "Spirits of this house," Agnes began, her voice steady and commanding. "We invite you to speak with us. Eleanor Whitaker, if you are here, please make your presence known." The air grew colder, the shadows deepening as Agnes chanted softly, her hands moving in intricate patterns. I felt a sense of anticipation mixed with fear, wondering if Eleanor would finally reveal herself and provide the answers I so desperately sought. Suddenly, the candles flickered violently, their flames bending and twisting as if caught in a fierce wind. The room seemed to grow darker, the shadows lengthening and swirling around us. I held my breath, waiting for a sign of the spirit we had summoned. And then, she appeared. Eleanor stood at the edge of the candlelight, her form translucent and ethereal, her eyes filled with a profound sadness. "Why do you disturb my peace?" she whispered, her voice echoing through the room like a distant breeze. Agnes remained calm, stepping forward to address the spirit. "We seek to understand and help you find peace. Eleanor, please, share your story with us." Eleanor's gaze shifted to me, her sorrowful eyes piercing through my very being. "I was alone that night, trapped in the storm. My love, my husband, he never returned. I wait endlessly, hoping for his return." Tears welled up in my eyes as I realized the depth of her pain. "I'm so sorry, Eleanor. I had no idea. How can I help you find peace?" Eleanor's form began to shimmer, her presence growing stronger. "You must remember us, honor our memories, and help us find the way back. Only then can we rest." As Agnes and I spoke with her, the oppressive presence that had haunted my home began to lift, replaced by a sense of calm and closure. The shadows receded, the chill abated, and the open windows seemed to seal themselves shut as if by magic. With a final, lingering glance, Eleanor smiled softly, her form dissolving into the air like mist. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice now filled with peace. "You have set us free." The seance ended in serene silence, the weight of the night's events settling over me like a comforting blanket. Agnes packed up her tools, offering a reassuring smile. Sometimes, all a spirit needs is recognition and remembrance to move on. In the days that followed, the strange occurrences ceased, the shadows no longer lurking and the whispers fading into the background of everyday life. My home returned to its peaceful state, the haunting presence now a distant memory replaced by the warmth and comfort of newfound peace. But the memory of that winter night remains with me, a haunting yet comforting reminder of the thin line between honoring the past and succumbing to fear. I often find myself gazing out at the snow-covered landscape, the image of Eleanor standing at the window a testament to the enduring bonds between the living and the dead. And so, I warn others, respect the histories that shape our homes. Honor the memories of those who have been lost, and understand that some encounters transcend our understanding. For in the heart of Wisconsin, amidst the silent snow and lingering spirits, lies a darkness that can consume even the bravest of souls, but also a light that can guide us toward compassion and eternal peace. Story number 2. Whispers in the winter, the creepy calls. I still wake up in the dead of night. The memory of that fateful winter evening in the suburbs of New York etched into my mind like the intricate frost patterns that once adorned my bedroom window. My name is Jessica Miller, and the events that unfolded that snowy night have left an indelible mark on my soul, a constant reminder of the thin veil between safety and the unknown. Living alone in a small house had always given me a sense of independence and peace. Nestled in a quiet neighborhood surrounded by towering oak trees and blanketed in snow each winter, my home was my sanctuary. The rhythmic sound of snowfall and the soft glow of streetlights provided a comforting backdrop to my solitary existence. But one night in December 2015 shattered that sense of security, plunging me into a nightmare I couldn't escape. It was a particularly harsh winter, the kind that made even the most mundane tasks feel like Herculean efforts. The streets were silent, the snow piling high against the sidewalks and covering the landscape in a thick, white blanket. I had just settled into bed after a long day of work, the warmth of my blankets cocooning me from the biting cold outside. The house was quiet, save for the occasional creak of wood expanding in the frigid temperatures. Around 2 a.m., my phone rang, its sharp tones slicing through the silence of the night. Groggy and confused, I reached over to my nightstand and glanced at the screen. It was an unfamiliar number, one I didn't recognize and didn't have saved in my contacts. Curiosity piqued. I hesitated before answering, my heart beating a little faster in anticipation. "Hello," I said, my voice wavering slightly from sleep. There was nothing but silence on the other end, followed by a few seconds of awkward quiet. Then, in a barely audible whisper, the voice broke through, sending a chill down my spine. "I am standing outside your house." Fear gripped me as I bolted upright, my heart racing. I glanced around my darkened room, the shadows stretching long across the floorboards. Slowly, I moved towards the window, pulling back the curtain to peer out into the night. The world outside was shrouded in darkness, the only movement the swirling snowflakes dancing in the cold air. I scanned the empty street, searching for any sign of movement, but saw nothing, no person, no vehicle, just the vast expanse of snow-covered terrain. A sinking feeling settled in my stomach as I tried to rationalize the encounter. Maybe it was a prank call or a wrong number, nothing more. Yet, the sensation of an eerie presence lingered, an inexplicable feeling that someone or something was watching me from the shadows. As I turned back to my bed, trying to shake off the unease, my phone rang again, its insistent buzzing breaking the fragile calm. My hands trembled as I reached for it, anxiety gnawing at me. I answered hesitantly, the room feeling colder despite the heater humming softly in the background. "Hello," I called out, my voice barely steady. This time, all I heard was heavy, labored breathing on the other end, deep and ragged, as if the person on the line was struggling to draw breath. Panic surged through me as I realized something was terribly wrong. "Who is this?" I demanded, my voice cracking with fear. Silence answered me once more, the breathing abruptly stopping as the line went dead. My mind raced, thoughts spiraling out of control. Was someone trying to intimidate me? Or was there something supernatural at play? The logical part of me dismissed it as a prank, but the lingering presence I felt couldn't be ignored. Determined to find answers, I decided to call the number back, hoping to reach whoever was tormenting me. But each attempt was met with the same heavy breathing, only to end in abrupt silence once more. Frustration and fear coiled tightly within me, making it difficult to breathe. The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind outside, seemed to carry an ominous message. I contacted the local police, explaining the strange calls and the unsettling presence I felt. They assured me they would patrol the neighborhood more frequently. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't be enough to quell my fears. Days turned into weeks, and the calls ceased as mysteriously as they had begun. Life returned to a semblance of normalcy, but the memory of that night lingered like a shadow, casting doubt and fear over my everyday routines. I became more vigilant, checking the locks twice and keeping a close eye on the windows, especially during the cold winter nights. However, the unease never fully dissipated. On several occasions, I swore I heard faint whispers outside my window, their words lost in the wind but their presence unmistakable. The feeling of being watched grew stronger, a constant reminder that something unseen was lurking just beyond the veil of my home. One particularly snowy evening, about a month after the initial calls, I sat alone in my living room, the TV providing a dull background noise. The snow fell thick and fast outside, turning the world into a silent, white abyss. I was engrossed in a movie, trying to distract myself from the ever-present anxiety. When my phone rang again this time, it was a different number, heart pounding. I answered, my voice barely more than a whisper. "Hello." Silence greeted me, followed by a faint rustling sound, like someone moving through the snow. Then, the same haunting whisper echoed in my ear. "I am still here." Terror seized me as I backed away from the phone, my mind reeling with fear and disbelief. I glanced around the room, the shadows now seeming to dance with malevolent intent. The temperature dropped even further, my breath visible in the frigid air despite the heater. Desperate for help, I called the police again, explaining the continued harassment and the escalating fear. They dispatched officers to my home, their presence bringing a semblance of safety. As they conducted a thorough search of the property, I felt a surge of relief, believing that perhaps the torment was finally over. But just as they were about to leave, one of the officers turned to me, his expression grim. "Ma'am, we couldn't find anyone out here. No signs of an intruder. Nothing at all." Confusion and frustration welled up inside me, the hopelessness of the situation pressing down on me. "But I know someone is there. I can feel it." The officers offered their condolences, suggesting I consider professional help if the fear continued. As they left, the house returned to its oppressive silence, the snow still falling outside. That night, the whispers returned, louder and more desperate than ever. "Stay with us. Never leave." The voices intertwined with my racing thoughts, creating a cacophony of fear that echoed through the empty rooms of my home. I lay awake, every sense heightened, feeling the presence inching closer, like a predator stalking its prey. The feeling of being watched intensified, the shadows around me thickening with an almost tangible malevolence. I realized that the calls were just the beginning, a prelude to something far more sinister. Determined to confront my fears, I decided to leave the house, to escape the unseen torment that had taken hold of my life. I packed a bag with essentials, locking every door and window behind me, and stepped out into the snowy night. The world outside was a blur of white, the snow muffling the sounds and adding to the surreal atmosphere. As I drove away, the feeling of being watched persisted, a cold presence following me through the winding roads. The car's heater fought against the biting cold, but the chill seemed to seep into my very bones. Every shadow that passed by the windshield felt like a pair of eyes staring back at me, judging and haunting. Hours later, I arrived at a friend's house, the warmth and safety of their home a stark contrast to the fear that had consumed me. I recounted the events of the past month, the strange calls, the whispers, and the relentless feeling of being watched. My friend listened intently, offering comfort and support, but I knew deep down that the ordeal was far from over. In the days that followed, the nightmares plagued me, vivid and terrifying visions of the woman in white standing outside my window, her sorrowful eyes following me wherever I went. I sought therapy, hoping to unravel the psychological torment, but the lines between reality and the supernatural blurred, making it difficult to find peace. One evening, as I sat alone in my friend's living room, the wind howled outside, and the snow piled high against the windows. The atmosphere was thick with tension, the air heavy with the weight of unspoken fears. Suddenly, the power went out, plunging the room into darkness. The only light came from the flickering candles my friend had lit to dispel the shadows. "Not again," I muttered, the memory of the calls and whispers flooding back. The phone rang, its sharp tone echoing through the silent room. I froze, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. The number was unfamiliar, its presence sending a chill down my spine. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and determination. Silence greeted me, followed by the same haunting whisper, "I won't let you go." Terror surged through me as I felt an invisible force pressing against me, the room growing colder with each passing second. I reached for the candle, my hands shaking uncontrollably, but as I did, the flame flickered and died, plunging me into darkness once more. Desperate, I grabbed my phone, but it was dead, no signal, no battery left. The whispers grew louder, their words now a relentless barrage of fear and despair. "Stay with us. Never leave." The voices seemed to seep into my very being, pulling me into a vortex of darkness and sorrow, summoning every ounce of courage. I stood up, determined to confront whatever malevolent force had taken hold of my life. "Leave me alone," I shouted, my voice breaking with fear and anger. The room responded with a deafening silence, the whispers ceasing abruptly as if their message had been delivered. The oppressive cold lifted, replaced by a sense of calm that felt both foreign and relieving. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of fear and despair lifting from my shoulders. The next morning, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow over the snowy landscape. The power was restored, the room filled with the soft light of dawn. The night's horrors seemed like a distant nightmare, the fear now a lingering shadow that refused to fully dissipate. Determined to reclaim my life, I decided to move out, leaving behind the house that had become a prison of fear and sorrow. As I packed my belongings, I felt a sense of liberation, the oppressive presence no longer haunting me. The journey to a new home was filled with hope and the promise of a fresh start, free from the shadows that had consumed my existence. Months passed, and life gradually returned to normal. The memories of the haunted calls and the woman in white faded, replaced by new experiences and the warmth of human connections. Yet, sometimes, on particularly cold and silent nights, I catch a fleeting glimpse of a shadow in my peripheral vision, a reminder that some horrors never truly leave us, lingering in the corners of our minds and the depths of our fears. But I have learned to confront my fears, to understand that the shadows and whispers were manifestations of my own anxieties and the unresolved pain of living alone. Therapy and support from friends have helped me heal, allowing me to move forward with a sense of resilience and strength. Yet, the lessons from that winter remain etched in my heart. I have come to understand the importance of confronting fear, seeking help when the darkness feels too overwhelming, and honoring the memories of those who may be lost to the shadows. The experience has taught me that while the unknown can be terrifying, it also holds the potential for growth, understanding, and ultimately, peace. I often find myself reflecting on that winter night, the fear and desperation that gripped me, and the courage it took to break free from the haunting presence that once dominated my life. The woman in white, the whispers, and the relentless calls were not just supernatural phenomena but symbols of the struggles we face within ourselves, the battles between fear and hope, darkness and light. And so, I warn others, respect the solitude, honor your fears, and understand that some encounters transcend our understanding. For in the heart of winter, amidst the silent snow and lingering shadows, lies a darkness that can consume even the bravest of souls, but also a light that can guide us toward healing and eternal peace. Story number 3. The woman in the window. I still wake up in the dead of night. The memory of that fateful winter evening in northern Michigan etched into my mind like the frost patterns that once adorned my old house. My name is Sarah Thompson, and the events that unfolded in my secluded home have left an indelible mark on my soul, a constant reminder of the thin veil between reality and the supernatural. Living alone in a century-old house nestled near the dense forests of northern Michigan had always been my sanctuary. The tranquility of the surroundings, the whispering pines, and the silent snow-covered landscape provided a sense of peace that was hard to find in the bustling world outside. Yet, beneath this serene exterior, the house held secrets that even I, its longtime occupant, was only beginning to uncover. It was late December, the heart of winter, when the snow fell thick and relentless, transforming the landscape into a monochromatic expanse of white. The days were short, and the nights stretched on endlessly, each one colder and darker than the last. On one particularly frigid night, as the wind howled through the trees and the snow piled high against the windows, I found myself restless and unable to sleep. The house creaked and groaned under the weight of the snow, each sound amplified in the silence of the night. I sat by the fireplace, wrapped in a blanket, watching the flames dance and cast flickering shadows across the room. The TV was on in the living room, a muted channel playing old black and white films that I rarely watched. It was then that I heard it, the faintest sound of footsteps crunching on the snow outside my window. At first, I dismissed it as the wind playing tricks on my ears, but the sound persisted, growing slightly louder, more deliberate. My heart quickened as I strained to listen, the footsteps stopping just beyond the glass. I glanced up, half expecting to see a neighbor struggling through the snow. But the street was deserted. The only movement, the swirling snowflakes outside, shaking off the unease. I decided to check the windows, thinking perhaps a stray animal had wandered too close. As I approached the living room window, the footsteps ceased abruptly. I leaned closer, the chill of the glass seeping into my bones. Peering out into the darkness, I saw nothing, only the vast, empty expanse of snow-covered ground and the looming silhouettes of the surrounding trees. Relieved, I turned back to the warmth of the fire, trying to shake off the lingering anxiety. But as I settled into my seat, the room seemed to grow colder, the shadows stretching longer and darker. I wrapped the blanket tighter around me, hoping to ward off the chill, when I saw it, a faint, ghostly figure standing in the window opposite mine. The woman was tall, her form barely visible through the frosted glass. She was dressed in an old-fashioned white gown, her hair cascading in loose waves over her shoulders. Her eyes, though hollow and sorrowful, seemed to meet mine, piercing through the darkness with an intensity that made my blood run cold. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the crackling of the fire and the howling wind outside. She didn't respond. Instead, she stood motionless, her gaze fixed on something beyond my sight. The room seemed to grow even colder, the air thick with an oppressive silence that pressed down on me from all sides. I felt an overwhelming sense of sadness emanating from her, as if she were trapped in an eternal state of grief. Summoning every ounce of courage, I approached the window, my footsteps slow and deliberate. As I drew closer, the figure began to shimmer, her form wavering like smoke in a breeze. I reached out a hand, my fingers inches away from her ethereal presence. But as I did, she vanished into thin air, leaving behind a gust of icy wind that sent shivers down my spine. Heart pounding, I stumbled back, the chill now permeating every fiber of my being. "Hello? Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice shaky with fear and confusion. The room responded with a silence so profound it felt suffocating. I tried to rationalize the experience, telling myself it was a trick of the light or my imagination fueled by isolation and exhaustion. But deep down, I knew something was terribly wrong. That night, sleep eluded me as the image of the ghostly woman haunted my every thought. I lay awake, listening to the creaks and groans of the old house, the sounds amplified by the silent snowfall outside. As the night dragged on, I became increasingly aware of a presence, a feeling of being watched, of eyes lingering just beyond the edge of my vision. The following morning, I awoke to find my house covered in a thick layer of snow, the aftermath of a storm that had rolled in overnight. Determined to regain a sense of normalcy, I went about my morning routine, checking the windows and doors for any signs of an intruder. But the house was as I had left it, the only evidence of the night's turmoil, the lingering chill in the air. I decided to visit the local sheriff to report the strange occurrence, hoping that an official explanation could quell my growing fears. Sheriff Daniels listened patiently, nodding sympathetically as I recounted the events. "Sarah, sometimes old houses like yours can play tricks on us, especially during harsh winters," he said, his voice gentle. "But I'll send someone to take a look around, just to be safe." Relieved by his response, I thanked him and returned home, the day moving forward with its usual tasks. Yet, as evening approached, I couldn't shake the feeling that the presence was still with me, lurking in the shadows and watching from the corners of my eyes. That night, as I sat in the living room, the TV playing its usual silent films, the temperature once again began to drop. The room grew colder, the shadows lengthening and deepening as darkness took hold. I tried to focus on the warmth of the fire, but the oppressive chill made it difficult to concentrate. Then, I heard it, the softest whisper, barely audible, coming from outside the window. "Help us!" I froze, my heart racing as I strained to hear the words. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, weaving its way through the room like a spectral breeze. I glanced up, my eyes searching the darkness for the source, but saw nothing beyond the glass. Suddenly, the window shattered inward, the shards of glass raining down onto the floor with a deafening crash. I screamed, diving back into my seat as the room plunged into darkness. My flashlight flickered and died, leaving me in pitch blackness. The only sound my own ragged breathing and the lingering echoes of the whispers. Panic set in as I fumbled to relight the flashlight, my hands trembling uncontrollably. When the beam finally pierced the darkness, I found the room in disarray, furniture overturned, glass scattered everywhere, and the remnants of a violent struggle. My heart pounded as I tried to piece together what had happened, my mind racing with fear and confusion. "Sarah, you need to leave." A voice called out, urgent and commanding. I recognized the voice. It was Sheriff Daniels. I bolted from my seat, scrambling to my feet as I made my way towards the door. But as I reached for the handle, the door slammed shut on its own, the lock clicking firmly into place. I pounded on the door, screaming for help, but my cries were swallowed by the oppressive silence that now filled the house. The whispers returned, louder and more desperate, surrounding me from all sides. "Help us! Find peace!" The voices echoed through the room, a haunting chorus that seemed to tug at the very fabric of my being. Desperate to escape, I searched the room for another exit, but every door and window had sealed shut, trapping me within the haunted walls of my home. The whispers grew louder, the voices intertwining with the shadows that now danced menacingly across the room. In a final act of terror, I remembered the old journal I kept, filled with notes and research on the supernatural phenomena I had always been fascinated by. Frantically, I grabbed the journal and began to read, hoping to find some clue, some way to appease the restless spirits that held me captive. As I read, the story of my house unfolded, its history of tragedy and loss, the untimely deaths that had occurred within its walls, and the legend of the woman in white who had been lost to the darkness of winter. It became clear that her spirit, along with others, was bound to the house, unable to find peace until their stories were told and their memories honored. "Release us," the voices chanted, growing more insistent as I continued to read. "Remember us." Realization dawned on me. I needed to honor their memories, to give voice to their suffering, and help them find the peace they so desperately sought. With trembling hands, I began to speak aloud, recounting the stories from my journal, the words serving as a bridge between our worlds. "To the spirits who haunt these halls, I honor your memories. I remember your stories and seek to bring you peace." As the final words left my lips, the room seemed to grow warmer, the oppressive chill lifting as the shadows receded. The whispers softened, their voices filled with gratitude and relief. The woman in white appeared once more, her form now radiant and serene. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice now a gentle breeze. "We can finally rest." With those final words, her spirit dissolved into the light, the room returning to its peaceful state. The doors and windows unlocked themselves, the oppressive atmosphere replaced by a sense of calm and tranquility. I collapsed onto the floor, exhausted but fulfilled, knowing that I had played a part in freeing the lost souls from their eternal torment. The next morning, Sheriff Daniels arrived, his face etched with concern and relief. "Sarah, are you all right?" he asked, helping me to my feet. I nodded, my eyes lingering on the now peaceful house. "Yes, Sheriff, they're gone." In the days that followed, the house returned to its serene state, the haunting presence now a distant memory. Visitors who once spoke of eerie noises and ghostly apparitions now shared stories of peace and closure. The legend of the woman in white transformed from one of fear to one of redemption. But the memory of that night remains with me, a haunting yet comforting reminder of the thin line between honoring the past and succumbing to fear. I often find myself gazing out at the snow-covered landscape, the whispers of the past echoing through my mind, a testament to the spirits that linger in forgotten places and the souls that seek to find their way home. And so, I warn others, respect the places you inhabit, honor the memories of those who have passed, and understand that some encounters transcend our understanding. For in the heart of northern Michigan, amidst the silent snow and lingering spirits, lies a darkness that can consume even the bravest of souls, but also a light that can guide us toward compassion and eternal peace.